In this video, I'm going to challenge you to take amazing motion and movement images by exploring the capabilities of your camera's shutter. Now don't worry if you're a beginner, because in this video we're going to take a look at example images. I'm going to share with you the camera settings. I'm going to go over all the essential theory so you can take amazing photos like these. Hi, Paul here from Photo Genius. Welcome to my channel and welcome to the 12th photography challenge. The theme for this month's challenge is movement and motion. The goal for this month's challenge is to give you a better and more solid understanding of how you can use the shutter speed to affect not just light, but also movement and motion. Now, if you've missed the previous challenges and you want to check those out, don't worry, I've listed them on the Photo Genius website. You'll find a link in the description below this video, and I'll also pop it up here as well. Now, with every new challenge, there's a new hashtag, and the hashtag for this month is PGC12. Please use the hashtag if you're posting your images to social media so that I and others can check them out. How you choose to capture and show movement within your images is entirely up to you. Sometimes you might want to freeze the movement to show detail, such as this image of a bird in flight, but sometimes you might want to add some blur to an image because it's a good way of showing not just movement, but also gives you a sense of speed and direction of travel, such as the image of this cyclist on the monitor behind me. So let's begin by looking at camera settings. Now for this month's challenge, if you're already familiar with the manual mode, then of course you can shoot full manual, but the mode that I recommend for this challenge is shutter priority. Now shutter priority is either S or TV on your camera dial, and this is a great mode because it allows us to control the shutter speed with the camera looking after the rest. Now this of course makes it a great mode for beginners, but also is the mode that most professional sports photographers also use. Now why exactly is it important for us to control shutter speed? Well, I think first thing we need to do is look at what the shutter actually is and how it works. So if you're a beginner and you're new to cameras, then the best way of thinking of the shutter is a bit like a door. It sits behind the lens, it's closed, which means that no light can get into this camera until the moment I press the shutter button. That you just heard was the shutter opening and closing. All the time it's open, the camera is recording light. When it's closed, of course, it's not. So the shutter has a very simple job to do. Open and then close. Now what we can do is adjust how long the shutter is open for, and this is often referred to as shutter speed. This in turn affects light and movement. So what I want to do now is demonstrate to you how different shutter speeds can affect light. So to do that, let's go outside. So I'm here in the garden with my dog Boo, and this is the perfect space to demonstrate how you can use different shutter speeds to affect light. For example, here we've got lots of light, it's very bright, but using different shutter speeds we can compensate when the light isn't so good. Okay, you good girl? Yeah? Go on then. With the dog's toy in direct sunlight, we will need the shutter to open and close rapidly. In fact, for this first shot, I've chosen the fastest shutter speed available on this camera, which is 1/4000th of a second. And you'll see the camera selects an aperture to suit. That's the F number to the right. For image number 2, I'm moving the subject into shade, and because there is less light falling on my subject, when I press the shutter button halfway down on the camera, you'll see the F number, which is the aperture, flashing. This is because the shutter speed is too fast, but if I slow the shutter down, the F number will eventually stop flashing, and now I can take a shot using a shutter speed of 1/500th of a second. Now, of course, it doesn't matter that it's just a picture of a raggedy dog toy. The point of this exercise is to show you how you will need to use different shutter speeds depending on how much light is available. A faster shutter speed when the light is really bright, and you can slow the shutter down to compensate when the light is not so good. So top shutter speed on the average camera is about 1/4000th of a second. Keep your eye on the number as I slow the shutter down. There's plenty to play with. Thousands for those really bright days, hundreds of a second for dull overcast days, maybe shooting interiors. Now we're down to tenths, which is when the shutter speed is slow. You definitely want to be thinking about using a tripod. After a moment, you'll see your number is followed by what looks like a quotation mark. Now you're into long exposures. This is 1 second. Slowing the shutter down, we have 5 seconds, 10, 15, 20, 25, and even 30 seconds. Now, if this is new to you, it might seem crazy that you can open the shutter for several seconds, 10 seconds, 20, or even 30 seconds. This is called a long exposure. Now, the great thing about having the shutter open for so long is that even when there isn't much light around, we can take amazing photos. We just do it over a longer period of time. This is called long exposure photography. You can take amazing nighttime photos using these very slow shutter speeds. But of course, the camera must not move whilst the shutter is open. So a tripod is an absolute must-have. Now, if you haven't got a tripod yet and you're thinking of doing low light or nighttime photography, I definitely recommend picking one up, and I've listed some recommendations in the description below this video. So now that we have a better understanding of how we can use different shutter speeds to affect and control light, let's get back to the theme of the video, which of course is all about movement. So how exactly does the shutter speed affect movement in our images? Well, let's start with the fast shutter speeds first. With the average camera, like this Canon camera here, top shutter speed, fastest shutter speed, 1/4000th of a second. Now that's incredibly fast. And because the shutter can open and close so quickly, what you're going to do is you're going to capture a moment in time that is as brief as 1/4000th of a second, and you can use this to freeze movement. So you will get lots of detail, and this can look amazing. But if you slow the shutter down, because the shutter is now open longer, if your subject moves or the camera moves, you will get blur in your image. And this too, of course, can look amazing. So we can use different shutter speeds to affect not just light, but also movement. To show you how this works, let's go back outside. So today I'm right in the heart of Brisbane, fantastic spot with a great view of the Story Bridge behind me. Going to be taking photos of cyclists as they go by. Picture one, using a fast shutter speed to freeze the movement, and with picture number two, I'm going to be using a slower shutter speed to blur the movement, and then we're going to compare the results. So for this simple demonstration, I found myself a prime spot on the bike path, choosing a fast shutter speed for the first image, 1/1000th of a second. And as you can see, it's frozen the movement because the shutter opened and closed so quickly. Whereas with the second image, I slowed the shutter down to just 1/60th of a second. That's fast enough to hand hold, but the moving bike has clearly blurred. Another way of photographing cyclists is to use a technique called the panning technique, where you pan and move the camera with the cyclist. So the cyclist looks pretty sharp, but the background blurs. Of course, this image behind me is using the panning technique. It's a little bit tricky and probably warrants its own video. So if that's something you'd like to see in the future, let me know in the comments below. So now I want to show you how we can use the same technique on a different subject. A very popular subject is water. So let's compare two images. With this first image, the shutter speed is 1/8 of a second. Now this is slow enough to add a little bit of motion blur to the waves, but also retain some detail. Adding a neutral density filter to the front of the lens enabled me to slow the shutter down to 5 seconds for the second exposure, giving me that classic nice blurry water look. If taking photos of waterfalls is something you're really keen to try out, then check out another video I made where I also show you how you can use ND filters to do long exposures during the daytime. It is a great video. I'll put a link up here and also in the description below so you can check it out. Playing around with shutter speeds and affecting movement is a lot of fun. If you want to go for fast shutter speeds, there's so many things you can photograph. Cars, bikes, pets, maybe a sports event. If you want to go the other way and blur movement, again, you could try this on water. You could try capturing light trails of cars going down the freeway at night, even the clouds moving in the sky. So I really hope you enjoy taking part in this month's photography challenge, and I'd love to see your images. So don't forget, if you are posting them to social media, please use this month's hashtag, which is PGC12, so I and others can find them. I have set up a free to join Facebook group for the challenge as well, so if you want to get involved with that, you'll find a link in the description below. If you've enjoyed this video, then it really helps if you give us a thumbs up. Consider subscribing if you're not already subscribed, and don't forget down below you can also leave questions, comments and suggestions. I'll see you next time. See ya. Bye. So let's take a quick look at the full shutter speed range. Turning the dial on the top of the camera to the right, and we can select the fastest shutter speed, which on this camera is 1/4000th of a second. Now you will need plenty of light if you're going to use shutter speeds as fast as this, but at this sort of speed you can almost literally freeze time. Something as simple as splashing about in puddles on a rainy day can look amazing. A bird in flight, or here a kookaburra caught in the rain. See how the fast shutter speed has captured the falling raindrops. Slow the shutter down and of course we start to see blur in our images, perfect for waterfall photos. Here, a cycle race, or using a technique called intentional camera movement. We looked at this in week 3 of our photography challenge. Look carefully as I continue to slow the shutter speed down, and you will see the number followed by what looks like a quotation mark. This is a 1 second exposure. Now we can start taking photos at night time. These are called long exposures, 5 seconds. 10 seconds, 15, 20, 25, even 30 seconds.